Welcome to The Future Ain't What It Used to Be, a series where we revisit 80s action movies that tried to predict the world of tomorrow and see how accurate they were. Not the flying cars, not the railguns, but the big stuff: power, media, culture, and politics. Each episode, I'll break down what these films got eerily right and where they completely missed the mark. Robocop might look like a hyper-violent 80s action movie, but in reality, it's one of cinema's sharpest media satires.
I'd buy that for $1.
Set in a crime-ravaged Detroit run by a megacorporation, it follows Officer Alex Murphy, brutally murdered in the line of duty and resurrected as a corporate-owned, weaponized cyborg built to serve and protect the public and shareholder value. In this video, we're breaking down what Robocop predicted with unsettling accuracy and where its chrome-plated vision of the future completely missed the mark. After being executed in a warehouse ambush that's still shocking to watch, Officer Alex Murphy is resurrected by OCP as Robocop. Part man, part machine, all cop. The film takes place in the near future, where Detroit's police department has been privatized. The streets are war zones, and OCP's solution isn't reform, it's product development. Programmed with 4 prime directives and armed with a sidearm that never seems to run out of ammo, Robocop rolls out as the ultimate law enforcement prototype: efficient, bulletproof, and marketable. But beneath the visor, Murphy isn't entirely gone. Memories bleed through the code. A name, a family, a past that programmers can't fully erase. Robocop delivers classic 80s cinema, from Ed.2 boardroom malfunction, Kurtwood Smith's chilling performance as Clarence Boddicker, and the immortal promise:
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
But under the chrome and carnage, Robocop isn't just about a cyborg cop. It had a lot to say, or maybe even warn, about where we were heading as a society. What Robocop got eerily right is the power private corporations now exercise over public institutions. In Robocop, Detroit is effectively handed over to a corporation. OCP doesn't just build cyborgs, it runs the police department, dictates redevelopment policy, and bends the city to its will. In 1987, that sounded ridiculous. Today, not so. Take prisons. In the US, companies like CoreCivic and GEO Group operate correctional facilities under government contract, generating revenue from incarceration. Now, concerns around the rise of for-profit prisons and the incarceration industry more generally have been explored in many award-winning documentaries, which I highly recommend, like The 13th, Prisons for Profit, and The Alabama Solution. In essence, Robocop and these documentaries highlight what happens when public safety becomes a service delivered by a corporation whose primary obligation is to its shareholders. Then there's policing technology. Firms like Axon Enterprise, the makers of tasers and body cams, don't just sell policing equipment. They build the digital infrastructure that stores and manages police footage, offering a platform as a service solution that integrates body-worn cameras, in-car systems, and unlimited cloud storage on its evidence.com platform. This creates a secure, end-to-end digital evidence management system used by major police forces around the world. Another example is Clearview AI, which supplies surveillance tools such as facial recognition. Its massive database is built by scraping billions of publicly available images from social media, news sites, and other open sources to create investigative tools used by federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. This business model, however, has been subject of significant legal and privacy challenges globally,
Facial recognition company called Clearview AI represents a clear and present danger to our societal norms and our privacy. Clearview AI's technology covertly scrapes online photographs, including personal profile images from social media companies. Clearview AI collects these photographs in a vast commercial database, currently over 40 billion images. Clearview AI sells access to these images to police departments and government agencies, or even may sell your images to foreign companies.
So, Robocop eerily predicted corporations inventing this type of integrated policing technology that leverages public data. In the film, we see Robocop constantly scanning, cross-referencing faces, and accessing criminal databases in real time. While in our time, it presently doesn't occur through a cyborg, the underlying principle of the relationship between corporate technological infrastructure, our public data, and critical public services is the same as depicted in the film. The examples we've shared so far highlight the increasing power private corporations now influence over public services, as predicted by Robocop. The last two examples of Axon Enterprise and Clearview AI bring into focus the invisible layer of public governance, the data itself, and how that's now being increasingly outsourced. In the United States, Palantir Technologies has embedded its platforms across various federal agencies. Its software now integrates massive data sets for the Department of Homeland Security, the US military, and various law enforcement agencies. Immigration enforcement agencies have used its tools to connect biometric information, travel data, and investigative files. And this isn't just an American story. Here in Australia, Palantir has secured contracts with various federal agencies, including AUSTRAC and elements from our national security and intelligence community. Its Foundry platform has secured high-level government security accreditation, meaning sensitive Australian public data is now processed through systems designed and maintained by a US corporation. Another theme Robocop predicted with eerie accuracy was the militarization of the police. Robocop isn't just a police officer, he's a weapons platform. Auto-targeting pistol, titanium body armor, integrated data systems. He doesn't patrol, he deploys. The visual language of the film frames crime as urban warfare and law enforcement as a paramilitary response. In 1987, that felt hyperbolic. But after 9/11, the US dramatically expanded programs like the Pentagon's 1033 program, which transferred surplus military equipment to local police departments, armored vehicles, tactical gear, night vision equipment. What was once battlefield hardware became used at the municipal level.
Since 1996, in response to the war on drugs, the Department of Defense transferred $4.3 billion in military equipment to local and state police. After 9/11, the Department of Homeland Security made additional equipment available to local law enforcement through federal funds for terrorism prevention.
That's right. And this has happened on such a scale that it's enabled small towns like Keene, New Hampshire, to apply for a Bearcat, a military-grade armoured personnel truck, which they needed because, as their application argued, the terrorism threat is far-reaching and often unforeseen, and cited as a possible target their annual pumpkin festival. Specifically, this pumpkin festival.
By the time the protests in Ferguson, Missouri erupted in 2014, images of local police standing behind MRAP vehicles with sniper rifles trained on civilians circulated globally. The optics were jarring because they looked like something out of a sci-fi dystopia. And it's not just equipment, it's mindset. SWAT teams were once rare, reserved for hostage or extreme situations. Today, they're routinely deployed to serve warrants, execute drug raids, and manage protests.
The number of SWAT raids have gone up by 1,400% since the 1980s. An estimated 50,000 now take place every year.
The normalization of tactical policing, helmets, shields, body armor, reflects a shift in the framing of crime, not as a social issue, but as a security threat.
Because if you have all this equipment, it's going to go to your head. Look at Doraville, Georgia. Population 8,500. The police there got a tank a while back, and up until a few days ago, this video was on the front page of their website.
And that shift in framing matters, because when crime becomes war, neighborhoods become battlefields, and citizens, well, they become potential threats. Where Robocop missed the mark was the predicted crime explosion of the near future. In the film, Detroit is portrayed as a city collapsing under the weight of uncontrolled crime. Streets are ruled by heavily armed gangs, police are overwhelmed, and private corporations are expected to step in because the public system has failed. This reflected real anxieties of the 1980s. Violent crime in the United States had been rising since the 60s, and by the mid-80s, cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Detroit were experiencing historically high levels of homicide and violent crime. To many, it seemed plausible that crime might continue to rise indefinitely. However, beginning in the early 1990s, violent crime in the United States dropped sharply and continued falling for roughly 2 decades. According to data from the FBI Uniform Crime Reports, the national violent crime rate fell by around half between 1991 and 2014. Homicide rates followed a similar pattern. Cities that had once symbolized urban crime waves, including New York and Los Angeles, experienced large declines. Even Detroit, the city that inspired the film's dystopian setting, didn't descend into the total social collapse as shown in the movie. Hell, the Pistons are even on top of the Eastern Conference as I'm recording this. While Detroit did experience severe economic decline, population loss, and at times high crime rates, it never quite descended into the level of gang-controlled violence as portrayed in the film. In other words, Robocop captured the fears and anxieties of the late 80s, particularly related to crime in big cities. However, the future it imagined never quite materialized. And let's hope for countries like Australia and the US, it never does. The other theme Robocop got wrong was its take on cybernetics and human-machine integration. The central technology of the film is a heavily mechanized cyborg police officer. The character is essentially a human brain and face integrated into a large, visible robotic body made of metal plating, hydraulics, and mechanical joints. The future imagined by the film is one where the boundary between human and machine becomes literal and visible. Firstly, as of 2026, we don't have anything close to the fully integrated, combat-ready cyborg like Robocop. Secondly, human-machine integration appears to have taken another form, the form of wearables, smart devices, and VR augmentation. But perhaps most importantly is the general technological trend Robocop portrays. We didn't become more mechanical, as the film predicted. Instead, we've become more digital. Rather than heavy industry and robotics companies dominating the economy, our most powerful firms are software companies such as Apple, Microsoft, and Google. Their power doesn't come from manufacturing massive machines, but from building operating systems, data platforms, and digital ecosystems. This shift also changed the design language of technology. Where Robocop imagined chrome armor, visible hydraulics, and industrial machinery, modern technology tends towards minimalism and invisibility. Smartphones, laptops, and consumer electronics are deliberately sleek and unobtrusive. The dominant design philosophy emphasizes clean surfaces, small devices, and software interfaces rather than visible mechanical complexity. Even automation itself often happens out of sight. Algorithms manage logistical networks, financial transactions, and online information flows, processes that are powerful but largely invisible in everyday life. In that sense, the biggest difference between the future imagined by Robocop and the one that emerged relates to the nature of technology and its aesthetics. Robocop imagined a future that involved more industry. The real future turned out to be more about software. Having said that, who knows what's around the corner? Robocop is a sophisticated satire of corporations, media, and the future of public power, intelligently cloaked behind a veil of classic 80s hyperviolence and one-liners.
Can you fly, Bobby?
Clarence, no!
Hit it!
So, how did the film go in predicting the future? Well, Robocop anticipated something profound about the future: the convergence of corporate power, public services, and militarized law enforcement. In the film, this convergence is literal. A corporation builds a cybernetic police officer, programs his directives, and deploys him both as a product and public servant. The machinery of the state and the machinery of the market become one and the same. And while law enforcement didn't arrive in chrome armor and an auto-targeting pistol, the underlying principle of private technology enhancing state power through force and information dominance is remarkably accurate. Where Robocop missed the mark regarding the future related to the predicted collapse of major cities and the aesthetics of technology. Now, no doubt crime is a problem, but we didn't see the total collapse of social order as predicted by the film. Secondly, it imagined giant machines, heavy industry, and visible cybernetics. The real transformation came through software, data, and network platforms, technologies that operate largely out of sight. The future didn't become more mechanical, it became more digital, and that subtle shift matters. We don't have Ed.2 stomping through Parliament, although that would be very cool. Instead, Robocop predicted something much more subtle about the future. A future where corporations and governance increasingly overlap. A future where critical public functions rely on digital systems that are privatized, contractual, and often opaque. A future where it's harder to know what is the main priority, the public good or shareholder profit. So, how did Robocop go in predicting the future? I'm giving it 3 out of 4 Auto 9 pistols. Thanks for watching and take care.